Latin America, a land of many cultures and many styles, like the salsa. The samba. The merengue. And of course, the tango. It's an area made up of 20 countries, 14 territories, 3 continents, plus the Caribbean, about 652 million people, and as of November 2019, one office of the Public Relations and Communications Association. Today on Stories and Strategies, we speak with the director of the PRCA in Buenos Aires. Obviously, there's a lot to be learned from getting in step with communication strategies in Latin America. My name is Doug Downs. My guest today is Isobel Arrowsmith, joining us from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Hola, Isobel.
Hi, Doug. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I'm glad you could join me. So it's November as you and I record. I'm in the midst of fall up here in the Rocky Mountains. We've had one snowfall. I see a bit of grass out there, though. We're actually having a warm fall. How is Buenos Aires in the spring?
It is about 28 degrees here today, so pretty beautiful. It's you have a beautiful juxtaposition of kind of like a concrete jungle almost. So there's a lot of glass and concrete buildings with all the sunlight bleeding through. It's a pretty beautiful place to be.
Wonderful. Isobel, you're in Argentina as the PRCA, Public Relations and Communications Association, the largest communications association in the world by membership, is opening a new office in Latin America. Buenos Aires is the chosen spot. Isobel, you've been with the PRCA for about 6 years. Mixed in with your background, you studied archaeology and anthropology at the University of Bristol. So how does one go from studying to be Indiana Jones to opening up the new PRCA office in Latin America?
Yeah, it's an odd switch, isn't it? I think the principles of why we are who we are, the sort of learned behaviors, the ways in which our mind gets us from point A to point B, always fascinated me. So I think the anthropological side of the degree kind of put me in good stead for working in PR. But as you mentioned, yeah, so we moved out to Buenos Aires in November of last year, actually, around this time last year.
2019.
2019, exactly. We had the London office since 1969, so just over 50 years. And then Dubai we've had for 5, covering Middle East and North Africa, Singapore for 3, covering Southeast Asia, and now over here in my beautiful Latin America.
And I want so much to learn more about it. Most of the listenership we've earned for this podcast, admittedly, is in North America, United States and Canada, and the UK. And then we have some listenership various parts of the world, including Australasia, Australia, New Zealand, different parts of Asia, in Africa. I think most, like me, don't know very much about the PR practice in Latin America. So what can you tell us, just in a macro way, about communication strategies throughout these very diversified 20 countries in Latin America?
Yeah, very diversified indeed. I would suggest that the way in which we practice PR is not so different from our friends over there in North America. It's a very amiable industry, incredibly creative minds. We're extremely fortunate and blessed in our industry to have both in abundance. I think a couple of differences that I've seen. One would be the adoption of technology. So unfortunately, we are somewhat behind the rest of the world in how quickly we do adapt and adopt new technologies, not only in the softwares and the platforms that we use, but also the ways in which that we actually use them. So using Twitter as much more of a sort of, I would say more of an infant way of using Twitter in terms of the marketing and the clicks to action and things like that. But the second would be the actual similarities, I would say, in the way that we do business over here. So as with much of the world, we do have a bit of an issue with cross-country communication. Now, this might be between individuals in the same company or just general industry conversation, but the issue remains true and the same, that unfortunately there just isn't a lot of conversation happening. I think globally, we need to become a lot less afraid of giving away our little trade secrets and focus more on actually benefiting the entire industry, because not only benefit ourselves and our businesses, but the societies in which we live and serve.
So in North America and Europe, the ratio of female to male practitioners in PRs, roughly the accepted statistic is either 2 to 1, or I've seen some studies say it's as much as 75%, with pay equity and the glass ceiling still very much being issues. Is it the same ratio throughout Latin America? And what about the pay scale, pay equity, and female leadership?
It's quite interesting that you mentioned the 75%. So the PRCA LATAM and Provoke Media census for Latin America that was recently put out showed that 70% of practitioners are female. These results come from a huge range of countries, so Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Ecuador, so on. So pretty representative of LATAM. And when you begin to discuss equity, I'm really, really glad that you distinguished in the actual factor that we're looking at. So in regard to pay, the gender pay gap's a global issue, and one that not enough organizations are doing something about. In fact, the PRCA voluntarily released its own gender pay gap in 2016, encouraging other organizations to do the same. And in the same year, 2016, we released our gender pay gap report, which, shameless plug, is available online for everyone to read for free. And then thinking about female leadership, there's quite a lot here in Latin America, which is fantastic. There are some, I don't know if I can say ass, but some real kick-ass women over here.
You can on this network.
Oh, fantastic. But they're running agencies, running in-house teams, and it's up to organizations like PRCA to celebrate and support those entrepreneurial women. We even had an event recently on leadership in Latin America with some incredible women on there. It's available on the PRCA YouTube channel. So we're very, very fortunate in Latin America in a lot of ways, and strong female leadership is definitely one of them.
Wonderful. Ethics is such a strong message in the PR practice today. I was fortunate to attend one of the PRCA's webinars recently made up of communications professionals in various parts of Latin America. I appreciate you enabling me to be able to attend and listen in on that.
Of course.
Ethics is clearly a strong identifier for them. But the reality is, in practice, you do still see some questionable things throughout Latin America, such as paying journalists to get earned media coverage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess I want to start by saying ethics is a strong message. It's a loud one and it's a clear one. And, you know, we talk about how grateful we are and how blessed we are to be in this industry, one where ethical implications are extremely high. I think, like everywhere in the world, there are a few things that can raise some eyebrows, but in regard to outright unethical behavior, it's not in abundance here in Latin America. I think, as I mentioned before, with sort of tech adoption, we are somewhat behind the rest of the world. So I think, you need to treat the situation in its own context, rather than try and compare us to Europe and North America. So the issue of non-ethical behavior so far surpasses reparations for individuals and organizations, because it forces PR to take a step back in its evolution. We go back just a few years, arguably fairly, we were being called spin doctors. So being able to stand united against those sorts of things is just such a wonderful journey, and one that I'm incredibly proud to be part of.
Tell me a bit more about the roles of earned media and social media in the communication strategies throughout Latin America.
Earned media is not as big here as you find in USA, Europe, and I believe it in part comes from the fact that economic crises, political crises, social crises are somewhat of a norm here. But what does that give us? That gives us creative talent like you wouldn't believe. Some of the most thought-provoking social media campaigns that I've ever seen, some of the work that gets delivered to Cannes from Latin America each year, just truly blows me away. And I also believe it gives us new approaches and new techniques to using everyday softwares. And that coupled with the strong leadership, it allows individuals to really keep their talent close to them in their organizations. And then you also mentioned social media. So we do use the same platforms, but things like paid banners on social streams, which I see a lot in Europe and in the USA, not so much used here. I think as anyone that's lived or worked in Latin America would agree, if you can get something done for free, then my goodness, we're going to do it for free.
It resonates everywhere, that message, doesn't it? Time for a quick movie clip. This was tough this week. We didn't want to pick a movie about Latin America by Hollywood. So we picked one of the most popular movies from Argentina, The Motorcycle Diaries, starring Mexican actor Gael Garcia Bernal, playing Ernesto Guevara, who would later become Che. A very popular movie throughout Argentina from 2004, distributed by Buena Vista International in Argentina, Pathé in the UK, and Focus Features in the United States. In this scene, a young Ernesto is traveling throughout South America by motorcycle with a friend when what he sees on that journey changes him forever. The indigenous peoples, the poverty in the countryside. In the scene we're going to play, it's his birthday, and he's been encouraged by friends to give a toast. Now, this is in Spanish, of course, so I'll just give you the translation first in the hopes that you can appreciate it as you hear it if you don't speak Spanish. Even though we are too insignificant to be spokesmen for such a noble cause, we believe, and this journey has only confirmed this belief, that the division of America into unstable and illusory nations is a complete fiction. We are one single mestizo race, from Mexico to the Magellan Straits. And so, in an attempt to free ourselves from the narrow-minded provincialism, I propose a toast to Peru and to a united America.
Aunque lo exiguo de nuestras personalidades nos impide en estos casos ser voceros de su causa. Creemos, y después de este viaje más firmemente que antes, que la división de América en nacionalidades inciertas e ilusorias es completamente ficticia. Constituimos una sola raza mestiza desde México hasta el Estrecho de Magallanes. Así que tratando de librarme de cualquier carga de provincialismo, brindo por Perú y por América Unida. Salud. Salud. Salud.
I was just thinking to myself as well, the toast that I'm used to is arriba, abajo, al centro, adentro, which means up, down, middle, inside. So that was a much more beautiful toast than I'm used to. So that no, but it's definitely going on my list because it sounds stunning.
If you're at the same wedding, maybe you go first and then let him go afterward.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Okay. That movie, by the way, filmed and produced in Latin America, it won Oscars, BAFTAs, awards from the Argentine Film Critics Association. Very successful movie. We begin our communication strategies, Isobel, by identifying and understanding our key audiences. Is the psychographic different in various countries throughout Latin America?
Oh, 100%. I mean, anecdotally, my boss once said in passing, "Oh, Izzy can head up to Mexico for a couple of days." At which point I told him, "Well, that's a 9.5-hour flight, boss. So you might want to send me for longer than a couple of days." I think unless you've been to LATAM, the sheer geography of what we're dealing with just isn't that obvious. So the psychographic differences are vast and varied, and getting to grips with that, understanding the nature of individuals from different countries has been a huge challenge. You know, I think we're taught from such a young age to pick up on social cues, but then you try and do that not only in countries that you don't know, but with people you don't know, in a language that you don't understand. And it gets tricky, but learning it has been part of this mystical journey that we've been going on here with the PRCA. So it's been great fun. But yeah, I would say come and check it out for yourself.
I'd love to. Tell me more about the things that we could learn from the PR practice in Latin America? How can we be better PR practitioners from the things that practitioners throughout Latin America are doing that we could learn from?
For me, I think it would be the strength in the face of fear. Everything, no matter what side of the fence you sit on, everything that's going on with the US elections at the moment, I think has really shaken people. Now, that happens in pretty much every country throughout Latin America. There's huge political divide. There's very, very difficult social classes to deal with. The chairman for PRCA Latam, Gustavo Avabush, said the other day, most of the children are poor and most of the poor are children. And that's really, really difficult thing to think about. So what we find that we're doing, and what we find a lot of individuals doing, is really harnessing the power of the talent that they have on the ground, not really looking to outsource from other countries, focusing on training and development for individuals within companies to make sure that they stay, and also just bolstering people up who need a lift as well. I think the market around in some of the world can be really cutthroat, but over here it's everyone's a friend, everyone knows each other. And I think that comes from a place of really deep emotion.
Isobel, the PRCA Latin America office is holding a virtual conference for members of the Public Relations and Communications Association. December 10th, I think, is the date that's been planned. And you have some wonderful sessions lined up. I know there's one at least on brain science with the delightful Hilary Scarlett from Scarlett and Gray, author of Neuroscience for Organizational Change, and some other clown that thinks he's going to speak on brain science as well.
I think it's going to be an exciting session, that one. Yeah, that's behavioral science and neuroscience is the one that you and Hilary are doing. We're very excited.
I'm looking forward to it.
But yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's 10th of December. We have sessions on social media metrics, leadership skills, how to work with influencers. It's entitled Influence in the COVID-19 Era. We're just trying to get people to a place where they can understand the world in which we're living in, without having to hear speculations about the pandemic. So I put together my ideal conference and things that I want to hear about, and hopefully other people want to hear about it too. Tickets are all available on the PRCA website. They can just Google Influence in the COVID-19 Era, will pop up. Tickets are less than $100 for a full day of content. Can't say fairer than that, can you?
That's terrific. We're going to put a link to sign up as well and get tickets in the show notes to this podcast. So
awesome. Yeah, it'd be a pleasure to see people there.
Great. Thank you. Gracias for your time. How would I say that in Spanish? Thank you for your time.
Gracias para su tiempo.
Gracias para su tiempo.
Sí, bueno, muchísimas. Sí, that was very good.
I look forward to chatting December 10th. Thanks so much, Isobel.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
If you'd like to send a message to my guest, Isobel Arrowsmith, you can email her at isobel.arrowsmith@latam.prca.global. And of course, that too is in the show notes to the podcast. If you'd like to attend that December 10th webinar, just link through the PRCA's Latin American office through the address we provided in the show notes here. As always, if you liked what you heard in this podcast, we're hoping you choose to subscribe to Stories and Strategies and receive updated episodes automatically. We're also hoping you choose to follow and rate this podcast on any directory you're listening on. And would you do us a favor? As always, recommend this podcast to one friend. If you have an idea for an episode, just want to tell us something, send us a note at info@jgrcommunications.com. Gracias par su tiempo. Did I say that right?
Close enough. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening.